All right, we made it. Jacinto Avalos, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to our house.
It's your house. You designed, you built it. You're also a co-owner in this wonderful house, Casa Sin Nombre. Hopefully I can convince you of a new name. I have it at the end of this interview. But I wanted our viewers, because episode 1, I walked through the house, showed the viewers the house, they suggested names to the house, but I really wanted people to get to know who you are and what inspired you to design and build Casa Sin Nombre. So without further ado, who's Jacinto Avalos? Where are you from?
Originally from Mexico City,
Okay.
but we've made Cabo our home for the last almost 35 years.
Okay, and when you moved from Mexico to Cabo, was it for professional purposes? Why did you make the move?
We had a lot of goals that we wanted to achieve in our lives, my wife Cecilia, myself, and to a certain extent our children, which were really toddlers at the time. And we were looking for a project that had to do with the education of our children, our family life, idealistic goals that had to do with helping Mexico develop in a different way. I'm an architect, but I'm an urban designer.
Okay.
So at the time, I usually tell people that we arrived at the end of the beginning and the beginning of the end.
What do you mean by that?
That Cabo had no development. It was a little village.
Yeah.
There were no supermarkets, no telephones, no nothing, no TV, no radio. And when we arrived, we had a taste of what pristine nature is like, and what a small community life is in all senses. And then it started growing to the monster that it has become.
So if you were to say 2 things that you have seen in the growth of Cabo, the most significant things that you're surprised now in 2020 from 30 plus years ago when you first arrived, what would those 2 things be?
Cabo, well, it has developed to a wonderful resort area that has attracted people from all over the world.
Yeah.
So, and that was non-existent at the time. And we've been able to provide tourists with multiple activities and also cater for all budgets, all tastes, all interests. So you have the desert, you have this ocean, you have fishing, you have snorkeling, you have diving, you have motorcycle riding, you have desert trails, you have golf courses.
Yep.
So this is an unbelievable area, not paralleled by any south of the border.
I would agree. And in the 3 decades of living and working in Cabo, how many projects would you have been a part of?
I would say over 80, 90 projects.
Wow.
In different areas. So we've done mostly residential. The patients that have hired our services as experts in the spatial health solutions.
That's interesting. You say patients,
Yes.
not clients or customers. Why patients?
Because I hate to refer to the people I work for as clients, which entails a commercial relationship. And I'm service oriented. So I like to understand my profession more as a vocation of service than a commercial activity. That's why I call them patients.
Okay, note to self, Jacinto Avalos is not my client, he's my patient. I like that. I like that.
I think it portrays, kind of transmits a different kind of relationship. And my interest is not making a buck.
Yeah.
It's not having an income.
Right.
My ultimate goal is to create lifestyles and people to make them happy in the environments that I create for them.
So, transitioning a little, we're at Casa Sin Nombre. Hopefully we change the name by the end of this interview.
Hopefully.
Let's talk about the Pedregal, because you've done a number of projects in the Pedregal.
Yeah.
you personally live in the Pedregal.
That's correct.
And what is the community? What does it mean to you? Why does the Pedregal, why is it a special place?
Well, Pedregal, most of all, compared to many other developments, because it's not the only residential area in Cabo, has a lot of things which make it probably the premium place to live in. And it's the topography. You have outstanding views. You have the diesel plant, so you have water which is available, and I wouldn't say necessarily affordable. It's probably the most expensive, one of the most expensive in Cabo, but that's the price. You get to be able to have that convenience. You have security. It's well managed at a reasonable cost.
Yeah. The house, this house, Casa Sin Nombre, tell me the process that you went through designing it. And I mean, it's a fabulous house. Architectural masterpiece, from the pocket doors to, I love the sliding doors from the barbecue area into the kitchen. What was the thought processes that you went through in designing the house?
When I design a home, there are three elements which are very important. And if you listen and resolve each one of them, it's most likely that the result is going to be positive, it's going to be creative, and it's going to be in harmony. One has to do with the patient, what you call the client, which I had no client, so I had to imagine who the patient was going to be. Therefore, the house had to be as flexible as possible. So it's like those suits that you go into a very expensive boutique and find that they have a suit, so they still have to adjust it to your measurements, to certain, but it has to be flexible. So that was one. The other at the side, and then the side I always try to get my spaces, the spaces I create, to consider what views make the most out of the views, take advantage of the climate, the way the sun moves, what areas you are going to have sun, are going to have shade, the cross ventilation, so those elements. And the third have to do with my understanding of the architectural language that I like to handle, and the one that's appropriate for a resort home. So the topography of this lot forced it to be in 3 levels. Everybody would like to have everything in 1 level,
right,
but that's not possible because of the size of the lot and because of the topography. So it had to be in 3 levels mainly. You were going to ask something?
The nice thing though is having it on 3 levels. The whole house, no matter where you are, you have a view. And so that's what's fantastic about this house.
Well, as I was saying, one of the most important things is to take advantage of the beauty and the views. So yes, I always try to give everybody as much view as possible. There's some homes that, fortunately, I've been able to provide a view, an ocean view, from the sink, from the WC, from the shower, from the bed, from every possible space in the house.
Yes.
That's, for example, Casa Clark, which is a perfect example of that. And that was done 35 years ago, and it's still a very...
35 years ago.
Yeah, and it's still a very contemporary looking, very, very well maintained home.
So that was a house you originally designed?
That was one of the very first houses that I designed in Pedregal and in Cabo.
Wow.
Pedregal, it was the 3rd house that I had designed. And in Cabo, probably I hadn't done more than 10 homes at the time.
And in total, how many houses in Pedregal would you venture to say you've done?
They must be about 30 or 35, easily.
That's astounding, because, I mean, total houses in Pedregal, was there maybe 400 or so, or 500?
You would have to ask Natural.
Yeah, the HOA.
The HOA.
So, I mean, you represent a good percentage of the houses designed.
I've been very fortunate. A lot of people have seen something of value in the way we design, the way we produce our homes, and the prices that we offer.
Yeah. What I really, and I wanted to ask you, I noticed this in your houses, there's like a geometric form, like kind of a star shape item. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you're talking about the drains in this
Yes.
case. Well, first of all, there isn't a single element in the home that doesn't require design and that is not an opportunity to create something beautiful for the people to admire. And one of the things are the drains. Drains, you're looking at one of them just in front of us. And yes, we've used that and other patterns for. One thing that we try to do is every home has some elements which are alike, some might be exact, but it also has many which are unique to each home.
Yeah.
And that you'll find if you tour and visit the homes that we do.
Off camera, on a prior occasion, you had mentioned to me the pocket doors. That was when you first came to Cabo, that wasn't present in Cabo, maybe not even in Mexico.
That's true.
Tell us about that.
Well, there are certain things that you have to understand that 35 years ago, life and the way you designed and the way you did things in Cabo was totally different to what people and young architects find nowadays. There was no pre-mixed concretes. You had to do your own concrete. There were no power tools. There were no bulldozers that you could find and jackhammer. So you had to get into, really sit down in a drafting board that nobody knows what they are nowadays. Everything was done by hand drawn. So you had to spend a lot of time really thinking about what you wanted to achieve in terms of architecture. And when I arrived, I remember some of the architects that had preceded me and some of the developers would tell me, there are hurricanes here and you should make small windows. And it's the Mexican style, so they should be wooden, should have squares. And if you visited most of the homes, you would find that they had small openings, they didn't really take advantage of views. And I would say, if not the first, I was one of the first that started challenging that in terms that, okay, you have a hurricane, but you can protect yourself against a hurricane.
Right.
Okay, you have a hurricane, but how many times do you have a hurricane? And what will you lose in the hurricane? Well, maybe a window. And that, if you have to lose a window, you can also take some preventive measures not to. So why would you spend your whole life looking through a little peephole at the view, waiting for that hurricane day?
Right.
No, I'd rather lose all the windows that hurricane day, but enjoy the rest of those 364 days in the year, that wonderful view. So that was my approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's a calculated gamble, right? And
well, it's like insurance. You see what your odds are, and then you take your risk. So going back to the question of the windows, when I started building 50 years ago, the first homes that I designed, and I enjoyed the space and I enjoyed the way they were coming about, but when it came to the point where you had to place the windows, I always had the feeling that they had lost something. Now you require the windows. And I was in Mexico City and I was in other cities, San Miguel Allende, Cuernavaca, doing designs and construction there. So when I moved here, I said, what a wonderful climate. Then I really don't need the windows most of the year. So that was one of the reasons why I said, I want them to disappear. And I remember that I would talk to aluminum guys and say, you can make them disappear. Yes, you can. If you can make one roll, you can make 4 roll. So we had to, it was a give and take. It was trial and error at the beginning. But we developed the system that then everybody started copying. Then the other thing that happened with the windows and why I made them disappear is people do an inside dining room and an outside dining room, an inside living room and an outside living room. So you start duplicating the house in terms of the amount of spaces, the square footage, and also the amount of furniture. And I said, why can't I be in my living room, which I like, but make it a terrace when the climate is good, and protect myself if the wind is harsh or there are mosquitoes or I need more protection. So that's why I developed that system. The infinity edge pool was also a fit at the time. Nobody did infinity edge pools.
Oh, I mean, it is in 95% of the houses. Pocket doors that disappear into the walls and the infinity edge pool.
And I could go on with some other elements, I think we were the first to start handling fire and fire pits and fire plates, fire dishes. We did a home the last century, in the 20th century, that we started doing that, and then they started imitating, and people at the hotel saw it and they started introducing them. So this part of the conversation is not to say that we want to be the first and that we brag about that or that we're genius. No, I'm sure that in many areas in Mexico or in the world, there were people coming up with similar needs, similar ideas, and similar solutions. But also remember, at the time, architecture books were not easy to get. There weren't that many, and what was happening was still not being published. So nowadays, you go into internet and you punch and you want whatever you need. You have instant images, examples, and you get all the know-how in 1 second. That was not the way it was 35 years ago.
You know, it kind of reminds me of like the pyramids, right? So you could be in Egypt and there's pyramids. You could be in Mexico and there's pyramids.
Which are not pyramids, by the way.
Oh, they're not?
They're not.
What are they?
Platforms.
But they look kind of like,
right?
But
They're kind of
But that, obviously they weren't communicating with one another, but they have similar, you know, you're the architect, structures in two different areas of the planet with no communication.
That's correct.
With one
Humankind has basic needs which are all similar.
Yep.
And then culturally, they have different ways of solving and interpreting it. We have different climates, so that conditions the way things are produced and the end result.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you another story about Cabo, of something that I was totally against and I reacted very negatively. I was told that you had to use Mexican tile. And I reacted very negatively. I said, wait, first, in Baja, there's no clay. That's why you don't make tiles.
Yeah.
You have sand, you have rock. That's your natural material here. Right. And it doesn't rain like it rains in summer. So why are you doing all those slanted ceilings when you could make them flat and take advantage and use them as terraces, which is something that we started doing. So another very first in Cabo that we did was having gardens on the roofs of the constructions, having pools on top of living spaces of the house.
Yeah.
So Casa Clark 35 years ago, you see most of the rooms have grass and had grass.
Yeah. And you just recently did a remodel on
Yes,
the home.
which we're very happy with. The owner was very afraid we would ruin what he considered a masterpiece and that he enjoyed tremendously. So he was totally reluctant to remodel it, and we remodeled it, and now he can't believe he didn't do it earlier.
Sure, 35 years, holy smokes. So the house, Casa Sin Nombre, can I suggest a name change?
Please do. Well, you started it all.
I know. So we had in the first episode a number of comments, like dozens. And the one that I really liked that resonated for me was Casa Mar y Fuego. What do you think about it?
I think it's wonderful. I like it.
Okay.
May I suggest just a little change?
Sure, you're the owner.
Well, partially, a very small percentage.
Okay.
But I would just change the Casa for Villa. Villa Mar y Fuego. I think it flows
Done.
more, it's more melodious.
Okay, I love it. Villa Mar y Fuego. No longer Casa Sin Nombre.
Or any other name that it has had in the past. I like it.
Perfect. And Jacinto, are you still doing projects? Like, are you still, are people contracting you as their patient?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No, actually they hire me as their doctor.
Their doctor, yes. They're the patient.
You have to use a lot of psychology, you have to do a lot of analysis. So yeah, you have to have the x-ray of the family and of the background.
The family tree.
And there's where the buildings get meaningful and have a content. They're just not shapes. You don't live in a sculpture, you live in a home.
That's right.
So you have to make it a home. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I'm designing some condos, I'm designing some homes. I just finished designing a theater for the city.
Really?
Yes, the City Theater for San Jose.
Nice.
Which came out pretty nice, but the people will judge it and then will say if they agree with me or not.
Well, fantastic. Well, Jacinto Avalos, I appreciate your time.
No, thank you.
And not only did we learn more about you, got a little history lesson, but we got a new name, Via Mar y Fuego.
Excellent. I really thank you and appreciate the time.
All right, until next time, this is Nick Fong with Ronival Real Estate. Bye for now.